When did you accidentally uncover a local conspiracy at the barbershop? I literally just drove away from the most awkward, stressful, and honestly, terrifying moment of my entire 75 years on this planet. And I'm sitting in my beat-up 2008 Toyota Corolla right now, parked 3 blocks from the barbershop, trying to figure out if I just committed a felony or if I simply helped expose a massive local conspiracy. BH, my iPhone 14 is already almost out of storage, and my hands are shaking so bad I keep autocorrecting barbershop to barbecue, and I'm pretty sure I left my Talenti gelato melting on the passenger seat. Let's rewind. I'm Claire Lopez, 75F, and I should be retired, but thanks to the US government and the concept of predatory lending, I'm still paying off my student loans from a master's degree I earned in 1978. Seriously, interest rate is insane. I calculated it the other day, and if I keep up this $347 monthly payment for the next 15 years, I will finally be free. I know, it's horrifying. Don't tell me to look into refinancing, I've tried. Because of this debt, every single local controversy feels personal, especially if it involves money, rent, or property values. I ran a loan for apartment 3B is $1,247, and that doesn't even count the utilities, which are apparently decided by the Dark Lord Satan himself. The setting for this whole insane drama is Sharp Edge Cuts, the oldest barbershop in our neighborhood. It's usually the place where boring old men like me talk about the weather and complain about the city council. It's supposed to be safe. It's Tuesday, around 11:47 a.m., usually a quiet time. I was there because I desperately needed a trim, and honestly, I was trying to avoid the passive-aggressive commentary of my neighbor, Paul O'Connor, 21M. Paul is a genuinely nice kid. He's finishing his associate's degree, but he is a master of the backhanded compliment. He's always complaining about how the boomers ruined the housing market while simultaneously asking me if I need help setting up my Hulu account. He uses the phrase, "okay, boomer," ironically, but sometimes I think he means it. Last week, he left a note on my door about the recycling bins being placed suboptimally. Suboptimally? I mean, who uses that word? Anyway, I was scrolling TikTok, waiting for my name to be called when Paul walks in. He's wearing a graphic tee that says "Capitalism sucks" and a pair of perfectly clean Air Jordans that probably cost more than my weekly grocery bill, $43.67 at Trader Joe's. I'm a strict budgeter. He spots me, and instantly his face does that thing where he tries to look warm and friendly, but his eyes are screaming internal judgment. "Claire, fancy seeing you here," Paul says, practically radiating self-importance. "It's getting cleaned up before my shift at Starbucks. Gotta pay the exorbitant rent, you know?" And GL, I knew that was a dig at me because I was complaining about the $85 plumber charge for a leaky faucet earlier this month. I just smiled and nodded, doing the thing where you pretend to be deeply interested in your cracked iPhone screen. "Oh, that's nice, Paul. Good luck with the latte art." Then things started to get weird, and this is where the neighborhood controversy really kicks off. Paul leans in, lowering his voice dramatically like we're in a spy movie, even though the only other person in the waiting area is some guy playing Candy Crush on his Samsung Galaxy. "So, Claire, about the community garden fundraiser," Paul whispers. "I was just talking to Jonathan, 45M, about it. He seemed really enthusiastic, which is odd, given what I heard." Now, Jonathan Martinez, 45M, is the neighborhood figurehead, runs the local youth soccer league, and is always organizing block parties. I thought he was my friend, honestly. We've been having coffee at the place on Main Street for years, sharing complaints about the city council. But lately, things have been feeling off. He started canceling our coffee dates last minute, sometimes triple texting apologies, but sometimes just leaving me on read. He always manages to show up right when a decision about neighborhood funding is being made. "What did you hear?" Paul asked, suddenly interested. I knew the garden fundraiser had brought in about $5,000, which was supposed to fix the crumbling retaining wall near the park. Paul, 21M, ever the passive-aggressive drama queen, pauses for maximum effect. "Well, Jonathan told me he was just talking to Nicole about it, and she said the funding was already sorted out because of a private grant." "Nicole Gonzalez, 38F, I asked, my stomach dropping. Nicole is infamous in the area. Is the BIL mooch. Her brother-in-law owns half the properties on the block, and she basically lives in his investment house rent-free while bragging about her entrepreneurial spirit. She's always hosting loud parties and parking her enormous Cadillac SUV in 3 spots at once. She basically leeches off everyone and contributes nothing." "Yeah, Nicole," Paul affirmed, adjusting his AirPods. "Apparently she's the one managing the books now, which seems weird because I thought Jonathan was in charge of all the cash deposits." I felt a cold dread start to creep up my spine. Last week, I had actually seen Jonathan Martinez, 45M, making a significant cash app transfer to Nicole Gonzalez, 38F. I had thought nothing of it then, maybe paying for a shared Uber or something. But the amount stuck in my head, exactly $200. I was still processing this potential financial drama when the door swung open, and 2 people walked in, immediately filling the small waiting room with tension. The first person was the mooch herself, Nicole Gonzalez, 38F. She was wearing massive sunglasses inside the building and carrying a Starbucks venti cup. She looked frantic, constantly checking her phone. The second person was a tall, very stressed-looking man who I immediately recognized as Jonathan Martinez, 45M. Wait a minute, this Jonathan Martinez was wearing a business suit, carrying a leather briefcase, and his hair was neatly slicked back. He looked completely different from the Jonathan I knew, the one who always wore cargo shorts and joked about Netflix binges. Nicole grabbed the suit-wearing Jonathan's arm. "Look, Jeremy, I told you, if we don't fix this today, my brother-in-law is going to find out about the security deposit withdrawals. I need you to go in there and talk to Tony right now." Suit Jonathan, not my Jonathan, looks around wildly. He spots Paul and me staring. "Nicole, keep your voice down, we are in public," Suit Jonathan hissed. I glanced at Paul. Paul was just as confused as I was. He was mouthing Jeremy? Nicole ignored Suit Jonathan's plea and pointed across the room at the barber chair where my actual friend, Jonathan Martinez, 45M, the one in the cargo shorts, was currently sitting with a towel wrapped around his neck. Other Jonathan is already here, Nicole snapped, pointing a manicured finger directly at my friend. He's getting a haircut. We need to catch him before he leaves. My friend Jonathan Martinez, 45M, looked up from his magazine. He saw Nicole, he saw Suit Jonathan, Jeremy, and he saw me and Paul staring. His face went white. I mean, literally the color of the foam on Paul's pretentious Starbucks cold brew. Nicole, what are you doing here? My Jonathan stammered. Don't play dumb, Jonathan, Nicole sneered. We both know you've been skimming from the Garden Fund account for almost 2 years, 8 months now. Those private grants I told Paul about, that was you covering your tracks. I felt my jaw drop. The Garden Fund? Skimming? This was $5,000 meant for the neighborhood. I looked at my friend, Jonathan Martinez, 45M, the fake friend, and suddenly realized why he had canceled all those coffee dates and why he had been so enthusiastic about Nicole managing the money, even though she has a reputation for being a total financial train wreck. But the complication, the absolute mind-bending complication, hit me right then, and it was the sound of Suit Jonathan, Jeremy, stepping forward. I'm sorry, who is the other Jonathan? Suit Jonathan, Jeremy asked, his voice shaking. Nicole, this is completely inappropriate. I thought we were here to discuss the property deed, not the community fund, and who are these people? Nicole looked at Suit Jonathan, then back at my friend Jonathan in the chair, and then her own face went white. She finally took off her gigantic sunglasses. Wait a minute, Nicole whispered. You're Jonathan Martinez. She pointed at my friend. And you, she pointed at Suit Jonathan, Jeremy. You are also Jonathan Martinez. Suit Jonathan, Jeremy frowned. No, I'm Jeremy Martinez. Jonathan is my twin brother. He moved back into the neighborhood 3 weeks ago to sort out some estate paperwork. Why? Has someone been confusing us again? It happens all the time. I felt dizzy. Twins, 2 Jonathan Martinez's, 45M, 1 fake friend, 1 complete stranger named Jeremy. Nicole thought she was dealing with Jeremy about the property deed, BIL mooch problems, but my friend Jonathan was actually skimming the Garden Fund, and that $200 I saw transferred, that wasn't a transfer between my friend Jonathan and Nicole. It must have been between Jeremy and Nicole, maybe a payout related to the property mooching. I felt the overwhelming urge to puke. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone. I didn't even notice the barber calling my name. Paul, ever the drama commentator, gasped audibly. Oh my God, there are 2 of them. This is literally like a poorly written Hulu mystery series. My friend, the actual fake friend, Jonathan Martinez, 45M, the one getting the haircut, stood up, the towel falling to the floor. He looked trapped. Claire, Paul, this isn't what it looks like, he pleaded. I was just borrowing the money. I was going to put it back. Borrowing $5,000 for 2 years and 8 months is not borrowing, Jonathan. That is theft, I said, and my voice sounded rough like dry leaves. You let Nicole tell everyone that the issue was already solved with a private grant. You let us believe you were our friend. Suddenly, the chaos escalated. Jeremy, Suit Jonathan, grabbed Nicole's arm. Nicole, tell me right now. Did you think I was my brother when you came to me about the property? Are you mixing up property issues with community funds? Because your brother Jonathan told me to come to you for the deed paperwork because he didn't want the mooch calling him anymore. My friend Jonathan shouted defensively. The realization hit me. Jonathan, the fake friend, had been actively using his identical twin brother, Jeremy, as a shield, hoping that any confusion surrounding the neighborhood controversy would fall on Jeremy, who was only in town briefly. He had weaponized the mistaken identity. I was done, just done. I had wasted so much time trusting this guy, venting to him about my crushing $347 student loan payments, only for him to be stealing from the neighborhood fund. I saw red. I'm calling the police, I announced, pulling my ancient iPhone 14 back up, even though the battery was at 3%. Nicole Gonzalez, 38F, the mooch, looked truly terrified. She knew if the cops came, her brother-in-law would find out everything about her leveraging his property. No, Claire, please, don't call the cops, she shrieked. She grabbed my arm. I'll tell you everything. Jonathan didn't just borrow it. He tried to frame me. He told me to use those $200 withdrawals to cover the first payment for a storage unit. He said it was for community supplies, but he was moving out. A storage unit? Paul asked, totally bewildered. Jonathan, the fake friend, put his hands up. Okay, yes, I rented a storage unit, but I was planning on coming clean. I needed the money for my sick cat's emergency vet bill. It was $1,500. I just needed time. Don't lie, Jonathan. Jeremy, Suit Jonathan, stepped in, pointing a finger at his own twin brother. You told me last week that you were struggling to pay the security deposit on a new apartment on the other side of town. When you want to move into to get away from me. This entire insane argument involving 2 identical men, a neighborhood mooch, and $5,000 stolen from a community wall fund was happening right there in the middle of a quiet Tuesday morning barbershop. I stepped back, completely overwhelmed. My chest was tight, and I felt that familiar, hot sensation of humiliation and rage mixing together. I was so angry at Jonathan for the betrayal, but also at myself for not recognizing the warning signs. I mean, the way he always insisted on paying in cash for everything, the way he always steered the conversation away from the budget. Past me was such an idiot. I don't care about your cat, Jonathan, or your new apartment, I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. I care that you used this neighborhood and our trust to fund your escape. Jeremy, Suit Jonathan, shook his head, looking heartbroken. I can't believe you would do this to me again, Jonathan. You know how much that property means to me. Property? What property? I asked. This was getting ridiculously complicated. Nicole jumped in, her mooch brain clearly calculating the quickest way to save her own skin. The property next door, the old Peterson house. Jonathan and Jeremy inherited it jointly, but they can't agree on what to do with it. Jonathan wants to sell it immediately, and Jeremy wants to turn it into a community center, a kind of parallel parenting facility, since they both have custody issues with their kids, but they use different lawyers, and they can't be in the same place at the same time. Wait, parallel parenting? Two brothers who literally can't be in the same room, yet they jointly own a major piece of neighborhood real estate that could solve the entire controversy. They both have kids but can't co-parent, so they use parallel parenting techniques to avoid contact. My mind was officially mush, but suddenly the real stakes became clear. This wasn't just about $5,000. It was about who controls the next big development in the neighborhood and the fact that two identical twins were actively avoiding each other while trying to leverage that property. I looked at Jonathan, the fake friend thief, and Jeremy, the stressed twin property owner. I looked at Nicole, the mooch who was now weeping into her Starbucks cup. I put my phone down, realizing that calling the cops would only shut down this drama temporarily. If they both had a claim on the property and they couldn't be in the same place, and the community needed that land for something, maybe I could leverage this insane coincidence. Okay, I said, cutting through the noise. My 75 years of experience finally kicked in, making me weirdly calm despite the internal screaming. You're not calling the police yet. Jonathan, you're going to tell me exactly where that $5,000 went. Nicole, you're going to tell me exactly what deed paperwork you were discussing with the wrong brother. And Jeremy, you're going to tell me about this parallel parenting idea for the Peterson house. Jonathan looked relieved, but also terrified. Claire, why are you doing this? 'Cause, I said, staring him down, I am not going to let a massive neighborhood asset, which could solve all our community problems, be controlled by two 45-year-old men who literally cannot tell each other apart, and who are using that confusion to steal money and avoid responsibility. I took a deep breath. My heart was still hammering against my ribs, but I had a plan forming. A crazy, probably illegal plan, but a plan nonetheless. Here is what is going to happen, I declared, looking at the entire terrified group. The only reason you two twins haven't destroyed each other yet is because you're using parallel parenting techniques to keep your kids separated. You are going to use those exact same techniques to manage this property and this crisis. Because frankly, this neighborhood needs an adult in the room, and I am the only one here who is 75 and has $347 in crushing student loan debt, which means I have literally nothing to lose. Paul, the passive-aggressive friend, looked impressed for the first time ever. Claire, you're turning this into a real estate custody battle. Damn right, Paul, I replied. And I'm the one who's going to be the mediator. We're going to settle this using the principles of parallel parenting, where you two communicate strictly through a third party, me, and never interact directly about the property or the debt or the garden fund. The twins stared at each other, then at me. Jeremy, suit Jonathan, spoke first. And if we agree to this, what is the goal? Goal, I said, already walking toward the door, leaving the entire group frozen in the barbershop, is that we find out who actually gets the Peterson house, and that we get the $5,000 back into the garden fund, and that Nicole stops being a liability. I'll meet you all tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. sharp. Bring your lawyers or just bring a mediator or just bring coffee, I don't care. But here's the catch. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the three horrified faces. Jonathan, fake friend, I pointed. You are not to speak to Jeremy about the property. Ever. Jeremy, suit twin, you are not to speak to Jonathan about the stolen funds. Ever. And Nicole, you are going to be my witness, and you will Venmo me $20 immediately for my time and my emotional distress. I slammed the door and walked away, back to my beat-up Corolla. I started the car, pulled out my phone, 2% battery now, and started typing this entire rambling confession. Just realized I left my Talenti gelato in there. I don't know who's going to mediate the parallel parenting of two identical 45-year-old men, or how I'm going to manage the mooch and the theft, or if this whole thing is going to blow up in my face. But I'm too deep now to back out. I have a meeting tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. to begin mediating the parallel parenting of two feuding adult twins who own half the neighborhood, and I still haven't fixed my student loan debt. Me, I'm not crazy. I need to know what to do next. My heart is pounding so hard I can hear it over the terrible engine noise of my Corolla. What? The actual? Fuck. Y'all are not going to believe what happened this morning. I am still processing the fact that I, Claire Lopez, 75 years old and struggling to afford basic dental care, have somehow become the lead negotiator in a real estate fraud custody battle involving identical adult twins and a full-time neighborhood mooch. I drove home from the barbershop, clutching my rapidly melting Talenti. It was sea salt caramel, RIP, and the entire drive back to apartment 3B felt like a fever dream. I parked my Corolla, which is sounding more and more like a dying whale these days, and spent the next hour just staring at the peeling wallpaper in my kitchen, replaying the words parallel parenting over and over. The truth is, I felt simultaneously exhilarated and deeply, profoundly stupid. Exhilarated because I had seized control of a situation that threatened to engulf the entire neighborhood, and stupid because my plan was literally insane. Why did I offer to mediate? I have no legal training. I barely understand my own mortgage paperwork. That $347 student loan payment looming every month, combined with the betrayal by Jonathan, the fake friend, gave me a burst of energy I haven't felt since 1998 when I argued successfully against a parking ticket in downtown Denver. NGL, the debt is the superpower here. I have nothing to lose. So 2 days later, the meeting my stomach was doing the Macarena. I had told them to meet me at the community center, which is the only neutral ground in the neighborhood that has functional air conditioning, a critical factor in August. I got there at 5:15 p.m., 15 minutes early, because if you're 75 and mediating a crisis, punctuality is your only weapon. I set up 3 chairs on one side of a long folding table and 3 chairs on the other. I put a big roll of blue painters taped on the absolute center of the table. Petty? Yes. Necessary for parallel parenting adults? Absolutely. The only person who showed up early was Paul O'Connor, 21M. He texted me at 5:20 p.m. I am outside the community center. Do you need backup or moral support? I brought my laptop for evidence tracking. Also, should I bring my capitalism sucks shirt for extra gravitas? I texted back, bring the shirt, Paul. And yes, you are my official note taker and passive-aggressive witness. Enter through the back door so no one thinks you're involved. Paul walked in, looking serious like he was about to present his thesis on avocado toast consumption. He was wearing the shirt, of course. Claire, this tape is genius, he whispered, setting up his MacBook Pro, the newest model naturally. Separation of assets, clear boundaries. This is the only way to manage high-conflict personalities, even if they are 45-year-old twins. See, passive-aggressive friend Paul finally had a purpose. It wasn't just critiquing my recycling placement, he was contributing to conflict resolution. Small victories. At exactly 5:30 p.m., the door opened. First came Jeremy Martinez, suit Jonathan. He was wearing the same crisp suit, holding the same briefcase, looking like he was about to fire someone important. He walked right past the blue tape line and paused, looking horrified at the scene. Claire, I brought my property lawyer, Jeremy announced, gesturing toward a very tired-looking man in a wrinkled linen suit. This entire scenario is unorthodox, but I need to protect my interest in the Peterson house. That land is generational. We need to formalize the partition. I nodded slowly. Good. Mr. Martinez, your lawyer sits here, on your side of the tape. Paul, please note the date and time Mr. Martinez's counsel arrived. Are tracking all expenditures related to this mediation. Paul typed furiously. Jeremy looked confused. Where's my brother Jonathan? He will arrive separately, I stated firmly. That is the core rule of parallel parenting, no direct contact regarding the contested assets. That includes the property and the garden fund. You communicate solely through me, the neutral third party. Jeremy sighed, running a hand through his slick-back hair. This is ridiculous. He's my twin. We shared a womb. Now you share a property deed that you refuse to discuss because of long-standing, unresolved emotional issues related to, presumably, childhood trauma. I finished for him. If you can co-parent your children without seeing each other, you can co-manage the Peterson house. Just as Jeremy sat down stiffly, the back door opened, and Nicole Gonzalez, 38F, the mooch, walked in. She was wearing a dress that looked suspiciously like a bathrobe and was chewing gum with terrifying enthusiasm. She looked terrified, which was good. Claire, thank God, I wasn't sure if I should show up, but I really need that $20 Venmo from you. My Starbucks habit is becoming unsustainable, she whined. Nicole, you are here as a witness and a partial recipient of the stolen funds, I corrected. Sit on Paul's side. You are the witness liability faction. Did you call the police yet? She asked, eyes darting nervously toward Jeremy and his lawyer. Not yet. If you cooperate, the odds remain low. If you start lying, the odds increase, I said, channeling a lifetime of frustration into one calm, terrifying sentence. Before she could sit down, the front door swung open again, and there he was, Jonathan Martinez, 45M, the fake friend thief. He looked terrible. He was wearing the same cargo shorts, but his I was going to put it back energy was gone. He looked defeated. He stopped dead when he saw Jeremy, his twin brother. The air got thick. Jonathan stared at Jeremy, and Jeremy stared back, a silent, powerful history of resentment passing between them. Jonathan, Jeremy said, his voice flat. I said no direct contact, I yelled, perhaps louder than necessary, slamming my hand on the table, startling Paul so badly he almost dropped his Mac. I mean, NGL, I surprised myself. Jonathan, you sit on this side of the tape, as far away from your brother as possible. Jonathan slunk into the third chair on my side of the table. He was alone, he didn't bring a lawyer. Probably couldn't afford one after the cat vet bill and the storage unit deposit. The parallel parenting session, phase 1 asset identification. I took out my notebook, a pristine moleskin I bought specifically for this drama, TBH, and tapped my pen. Okay, rule 1, we deal with the issues separately. We'll start with the stolen community funds, because that impacts the neighborhood immediately, and it concerns Jonathan, I announced. Jeremy and your lawyer, you are to remain silent and take notes regarding the property division. Do not speak about the $5,000. Jeremy visibly clenched his jaw, but his lawyer put a calming hand on his arm. Jonathan, I continued, staring down the man who had pretended to be my friend for years. Where's the $5,000 from the garden fund? He stammered. Okay, so I was going to put it back. The cat muffin she had this emergency GI blockage, and the vet bill was astronomical, $1,500. Where did the other $3,500 go, Jonathan? Paul interjected, sounding like a professional prosecutor. I think Paul watched too much Law and Order. Jonathan sighed, defeated. The rest was the security deposit and first month's rent on a new place. I was moving to the other side of town to get away from Jeremy, honestly. I couldn't handle the pressure of sharing the Peterson house property with him, knowing he wanted to turn it into some kind of co-op community center. Why did you let Nicole tell us the fund was settled by a private grant then? I pushed. Because I needed time. Nicole owed me a favor. I thought if people thought the retaining wall was funded, they wouldn't check the accounts for a few months. I transferred her the $200 for the storage unit deposit and told her to spread the rumor. I panicked. Nicole jumped in, defensively. Hey, I didn't know the scope of the theft. He just said he needed quick cover for administrative expenses related to the community center planning. I thought it was just minor budget shuffling. I mean, NGL, I do shady stuff, but usually it's property fraud, not stealing from the children's garden. I rubbed my temples. This was worse than I thought. Not only had Jonathan stolen the money, but he'd tried to weaponize Nicole's already terrible reputation to cover his tracks, hoping she would take the blame when the checks bounced. So, the $5,000 is gone, I summarized. But you have a storage unit full of what exactly? My stuff, Jonathan mumbled. Clothes, books, my Xbox. I looked at Paul. Paul, write this down. Jonathan Martinez must liquidate the contents of the storage unit immediately, and whatever profit he makes, even if it's just selling the Xbox, goes directly back to the garden fund. The remaining $5,000 deficit will be addressed in the property division discussion. Jonathan looked terrified. But my Xbox is worth at least $400. I need that. You need to repay the neighborhood, Jonathan, I said coldly. My anger was real now. He had the audacity to worry about his Xbox when children couldn't safely use the park. And Nicole, I added, you must provide Paul with a full, notarized statement regarding how Jonathan instructed you to cover up the missing funds. You are cooperating or you're facing criminal charges. Nicole squeaked. But the $20 Venmo? I haven't gotten it. It's pending your full cooperation, Mooch, I replied. I called her Mooch out loud and I didn't even feel bad about it. Phase 2, the property partition parallel parenting in action. I grabbed the roll of blue tape and stuck a piece on Jonathan's mouth. Okay, I didn't actually stick it on his mouth, but I glared at him so hard the tape metaphorically appeared. Okay, focus shifting, I announced. Jeremy and your lawyer, this is your time to speak. Jonathan, you're silent. We're not allowed to react, make faces, or interrupt your twin. Jeremy leaned forward, relief washing over his face that the focus wasn't on him or his property issues with Nicole. The Peterson house is a major neighborhood asset, Jeremy explained, adjusting his tie. It's jointly owned, inherited from our late Aunt Clara. We are 50-50 owners. I have been trying for 8 months to formalize a partnership agreement with Jonathan regarding its use. I want to turn it into a community resource, specifically the parallel parenting facility, a safe, neutral location where separated parents in the neighborhood can exchange children and attend supervised visits without high conflict. Wait, is this parallel parenting idea purely related to your kids, Jeremy, or is it a community thing? Paul asked, ever the investigative journalist. It's primarily for the community, Jeremy insisted, though he looked away slightly. Yes, Jonathan and I both have complex custody arrangements. We use different lawyers, we cannot speak to each other, and we manage exchange days with a detailed calendar and communication log. The irony is, we are the perfect test case for the facility. And Jonathan wants to sell it immediately, correct? I asked, looking across the blue tape barrier. Jeremy nodded grimly. He wants cash out. Wants to sell to a developer, which would likely mean the house is knocked down and replaced with 3 ridiculously overpriced townhouses. It would ruin the aesthetic of the block and eliminate a critical community opportunity. Why do you need the money so badly, Jonathan? I asked, breaking the silence rule myself, but this felt important. Jonathan, metaphorical tape on mouth, shrugged miserably. I need the money to pay off some other debts. I've been struggling financially for a while, Claire. Garden fund was just the most accessible cash I could think of. I was panicked. So we have $5,000 stolen, which could be fixed if the property were sold, I mused. But if the property is sold, the neighborhood loses the community resource Jeremy wants to build, and the neighborhood also loses money on the retaining wall. This was the knot. The stolen money and the property were inextricably linked. My lawyer has proposed buying Jonathan out, Jeremy offered. Jonathan is refusing to sign the paperwork. He thinks the house is worth $800,000, and I only offered him $350,000 for his share. That's a massive difference, Paul noted. Because the house needs $100,000 in repairs just to be habitable, the lawyer chimed in, pointing at the property assessment documents he brought. And the zoning is complicated. Jonathan, are you willing to accept a buyout if the price is fair, and you repay the garden fund immediately? I asked. Jonathan wrote something on a piece of paper and slid it across the table to me. It read, I will accept $400,000, but only if Jeremy guarantees that he will name the community center, the Claire Lopez Parallel Parenting and Financial Freedom Initiative. I stared at the note. He was bribing me with naming rights. The audacity. Jonathan, I said, putting the note back on his side, I don't need my name on anything. I need my $347 student loan payment to disappear, and I need the garden fund to be restored. We are not negotiating naming rights. I looked at Jeremy. Jeremy, can you commit to paying Jonathan $400,000, conditional on him repaying the $5,000 immediately, and him signing a non-compete for community activities within a 5-block radius for the next 5 years? I threw in the non-compete because I genuinely needed Jonathan out of my life. Jeremy and his lawyer huddled. After 30 seconds, Jeremy looked up. If we can close in 90 days, yes. But the $5,000 must be returned immediately upon signing the final intent to sell. Jonathan, do you agree to sell your share for $400,000, contingent on a 90-day closing window, immediate repayment of the $5,000, and no more community involvement in this area? I asked. Jonathan nodded quickly. He was desperate for the cash. The complication, the property deed and Nicole, okay, phase 3, loose ends. Nicole, I addressed the mooch. Why were you talking to Jeremy about the property deed when you thought he was Jonathan? Nicole, who had been relatively quiet, perked up. Oh, that was the big problem. My brother-in-law is trying to kick me out of the rent-free investment house. I was trying to leverage the Peterson house deed against him. I needed Jonathan, the one I thought was the good one, which turned out to be Jeremy, to sign an affidavit saying that his brother-in-law had verbally agreed to lease me the house indefinitely, which was a total lie, but I needed leverage. You tried to commit property fraud using a complicated sibling inheritance dispute, Paul summarized dryly. When you put it like that, it sounds bad, Nicole mumbled. It is bad, Nicole, I said. Jeremy, did you sign any affidavits for Nicole? Absolutely not. I told her I couldn't help her with her brother-in-law's property, only my own joint property with Jonathan. She was insistent, and that's why she followed me to the barbershop. She thought I was using the barbershop to hide from her, just like my brother was. The twins were actively avoiding Nicole, but for different reasons, I realized out loud. Jonathan was avoiding her because she knew about the stolen funds. Jeremy was avoiding her because she was trying to leverage his property deed to solve her BIL mooch issues. This entire web was spun from avoidance and mistaken identity. Nicole, I concluded, you are off the hook for the garden fund cover-up if you provide Paul with the statement. but you are banned from coming within 50 feet of the Peterson house property, and you owe the neighborhood 2 weekends of unpaid labor cleaning up the retaining wall when we finally get the money. Nicole looked horrified at the prospect of manual labor. 2 weekends? Can't I just Venmo the $20 instead? No, Nicole. This is about contribution, not avoidance. And I already got the $20 Venmo from you the day before yesterday, which I immediately put towards my Sally Me bill, BTW. I was petty, yes, but that $20 felt like the purest victory of my week. The meeting ended abruptly after we established the 90-day closing framework. Jonathan signed a preliminary document agreeing to the price. Jeremy signed a document agreeing to move forward with the community center project. And Nicole was forced to shake Paul's hand, promising the statement. I watched the two twins walk out the door, carefully timing their exit so they wouldn't cross paths in the hallway. They were using parallel parenting techniques to manage a $400,000 real estate transaction. I felt weirdly proud. Update: the passive-aggressive postmortem, so it's been 2 weeks since the community center showdown. I thought the drama was over. I thought I could go back to worrying only about my student loan balance and my suboptimal recycling placement. I was wrong. Paul O'Connor, my passive-aggressive friend turned surprisingly effective paralegal, has become completely obsessed with this. He shows up at my apartment almost every day to review the documents and provide unsolicited analysis. Claire, he said yesterday, sipping a complicated low-sugar oat milk latte he made at home, NGL, it was delicious. I realized something critical about Jonathan the thief. What, Paul? That he's a pathological liar who used our friendship to cover up theft. Well, yes. But also, his desire to immediately sell the Peterson house wasn't just about debt. It was about destroying Jeremy's dream. It was about sibling rivalry weaponized by real estate. Community fund theft was just a symptom of the twin conflict. I realized Paul was actually right. The real neighborhood controversy wasn't the $5,000. It was the two grown men who hated each other so much they couldn't be in the same room, and that hatred was preventing major neighborhood progress. The financial reality check, the 90-day countdown, is officially on for the Peterson house sale. Jeremy's lawyer is rushing the appraisals and the repair estimates. Meanwhile, I'm stuck in the awkward middle. I got a frantic text from Jonathan Thief 3 days ago. Jonathan, Claire, my buyer for the Xbox backed out. I only have $150 now. I need the rest of the storage unit proceeds to make the final payment on the unit before I can move the rest of my stuff. Can you ask Jeremy if he can advance me $500? I almost laughed. The audacity. I replied instantly. Claire, no, Jonathan. It is not how parallel parenting mediation works. I'm your communication bridge, not your personal ATM. If you need money, you need to find a way to liquidate your possessions quickly or ask a relative. You are a 45-year-old man. Figure it out. He immediately called me. I sent him to voicemail. Boundary setting is going well? Later that day, I got a text from Jeremy, suit twin. Jeremy, Claire, my brother keeps calling me from unknown numbers. Left a voicemail asking for $500. I need you to address this immediately. He's violating the no-contact rule regarding finances. I will deduct $500 from his final settlement if he contacts me again. I had to mediate the phone call violation. I called Jeremy and explained that Jonathan was in a panic because he couldn't pay his storage unit bill, which ironically contained the only assets he had to repay the garden fund. Look, Jeremy, I said, the problem is that he needs money to liquidate his assets, but the only assets he has are in storage, and he needs money for the storage unit. It's a logistical nightmare. Jeremy, who is apparently a softie despite the business suit, hesitated. Fine. Tell him I will send $500 to his new landlord as a partial payment if he agrees to send me the receipt for the immediate liquidation of the storage unit within 48 hours. He must send that receipt to you, Claire, not me. I brokered the deal. It felt exhausting, like wrangling two toddlers, but the outcome was good. Jonathan got $500 toward his new rent, and in exchange, the community received $350 from the liquidation. It turned out his Xbox was indeed worth more than $150, but he lied about the initial buyer. So far, $350 is back in the garden fund account. Only $4,650 to go. The personal toll and the unexpected alliance a week went by where the only update I had was Nicole Gonzalez emailing Paul a 10-page manifesto detailing how Jonathan tried to frame her. It was a masterpiece of self-justification and victimhood. Paul summarized it. She basically says, I'm a mooch, but I'm an honest mooch. He's a thief who tried to frame an honest mooch. I was dealing with all the stress while simultaneously working my part-time job as a bookkeeper for a small local bakery, which barely covers the utilities. The student loan payments are due on the 15th of every month, and the 15th was looming. I had barely slept in 3 weeks. I finally had a moment of pure weakness. I logged into my student loan portal. $347 due. $347. That number is the soundtrack to my life. I was sitting there staring at the screen, feeling the cold weight of the debt when I got a text message. It was Paul. Paul, Claire, I ran the numbers. If we manage to close the Peterson house deal at $400K, Jonathan will pay back the $5K and that pays for the retaining wall. What about your debt? I typed back instantly. My debt is irrelevant, Paul. It's a lifetime commitment. Paul, no, it's not. I've been researching government programs for loans originated before 1980. There are possibilities. You're paying off a debt that existed before I was born. Also, I started a GoFundMe for the garden fund deficit and linked Nicole's statement to it, so people know we're working on it. We've raised $500 in 24 hours. The community supports us. I stared at the GoFundMe link. The picture was a blurry photo Paul took of me standing next to the blue tape divider. The headline, 75-year-old fights twin fraud to save community garden. I felt a rush of embarrassment, followed by a dizzying wave of emotion. I am not used to people helping me. I'm used to dealing with my debt alone, in silence, in the dark corners of the internet. Paul, why are you doing this? I texted. All because you set boundaries, forced these two idiots to act like adults using weird custody rules, and you are literally sacrificing your time to save our neighborhood park while simultaneously being crushed by predatory student loan debt. You are the opposite of suboptimal, Claire. I realized I was focusing all my passive-aggressive energy on tiny problems, and you were fixing massive, systemic ones. That was the highest compliment I have ever received from Paul O'Connor, the man who once passive-aggressively organized my spice rack because he thought it was disorganized. The confrontation, boundaries, and fallout the community support motivated me. I started sleeping better. But then, Jonathan Thief tried to pull a fast one. 3 weeks after the mediation, I received an email, ostensibly from Jeremy's lawyer, stating that Jeremy was backing out of the purchase of the Peterson house because Jonathan had violated the spirit of the agreement by publicly discussing the stolen funds on a Reddit thread. I immediately called Jeremy's lawyer. Did you send this email? Is Jeremy backing out? I demanded. Absolutely not, Claire. The closing is on track. We are 2 weeks away from signing the final documents. I have no idea what you're talking about. I looked at the email again. The address was subtly different. Jeremy Martinez Legal, com instead of Jeremy Martinez Law, com. It was Jonathan, the fake friend. He was trying to sabotage the sale by impersonating his brother's lawyer. He must have realized that once the sale went through, he would have no more leverage over Jeremy, and he might have to face his other creditors. I drove straight to Jonathan's current apartment, which was a risky move, as it violated the strictly through me rule, but I was too angry to care. I knocked hard. Jonathan opened the door looking sweaty and panicked. Claire, what are you doing here? You know we aren't supposed to, I cut him off, holding up my phone with the fake email visible. I am here because you committed mail fraud, Jonathan. You tried to derail a $400,000 transaction that would fix the retaining wall and give your brother his dream because you are a selfish coward who cannot handle responsibility. He wilted. It was just a joke, Claire. I was testing the system. Stop lying. You violated the core principle of parallel parenting. You tried to communicate behind the mediator's back to inflict damage. Only reason I haven't shown this to Jeremy's lawyer is because I want the retaining wall fixed more than I want to see you in jail. He started crying, real tears. I just didn't want him to win, Claire. He always wins. He got the promotion, he got the better custody agreement. I just wanted to feel like I had control over something. I felt the sudden collapse of my anger, replaced by a deep, tired sadness. He wasn't just a thief, he was broken. He'd used the community fund and his identical twin's identity as weapons in a lifetime sibling rivalry. I don't care about your sibling rivalry, Jonathan, I said, my voice low and steady. I care about the neighborhood. Here's what is going to happen. You are going to apologize to me, and you are going to send a certified letter to Jeremy's lawyer, admitting to the attempted sabotage and reaffirming your commitment to the sale. If you do this, I will keep this attempted fraud a secret. Nodded quickly, sobbing. He looked exactly like Jeremy, but utterly defeated. The power of being the neutral third party was immense. He sat down and wrote the letter immediately, and he apologized. His apology was weak, focusing on how stressed he was, but I accepted it because I needed to move the process along. I'm sorry, Claire, he sniffled. I really thought we were friends. We were, I said. But friends don't let their friends steal $5,000 from the community garden. Goodbye, Jonathan. I will only be contacting you regarding logistics for the closing. I walked away and immediately blocked his number. The resolution, the messy middle, fast forward to the day of the closing, 90 days after the barbershop incident. The sale went through. Jeremy is now the sole owner of the Peterson house, with plans moving forward for the Peterson Community and Parallel Parenting Center. Jonathan received his $400,000 settlement, minus legal fees, transfer taxes, and the $5,000 he immediately wired back to the garden fund account. The moment the $5,000 hit the garden fund, I felt a physical relief. The money was back. The retaining wall can be fixed. The neighborhood controversy over the fund is over. But the resolution isn't clean. Jonathan is gone. He moved to the other side of town and hasn't contacted anyone. Our mutual friends are divided. Some are furious he stole the money. Some pity him because of his desperate financial situation and the sibling rivalry. I've accepted that the friendship is permanently terminated, and honestly, the silence is peaceful. Nicole Gonzalez, the mooch, was forced to spend 2 weekends hauling bricks at the retaining wall site. Paul showed up with his capitalism suck shirt and took pictures of her looking miserable. Pictures are now legendary in the local neighborhood watch chat. She fulfilled her obligation, but she still mooches off her BIL. That's probably a lifetime commitment for her. Jeremy Martinez, suit twin, has been surprisingly appreciative. He wired me $500 unsolicited for my services as a high-conflict mediator. I used $347 of it to pay my student loan for the month. That small act felt like a massive victory. As for Paul, he actually developed a working relationship with Jeremy's lawyer and is now interning at a local legal aid office, focusing on property rights and community zoning. He still critiques my recycling, but now he phrases it. Claire, statistically, the placement of the blue bin outside the recommended radius is decreasing efficiency by 7.8%. I'll take it. The aftermath and reflection, it's been 6 months since the closing. Neighborhood is excited about the Peterson House project. Jeremy is serious about the Parallel Parenting Center. He even consulted with me about the layout, asking if the color of the paint was too high conflict. I told him beige is always low conflict. I am sitting here, typing this from my apartment 3B. My rent is still $1,247, and my student loan debt is still crushing. I still have $347 due next month. Something has shifted. I learned that the most explosive community controversies are often just a cover for deeply personal, unresolved family dysfunction, often involving money. And I learned that my crushing debt, which felt like an anchor, is actually my superpower. Because when you are 75 and paying off a 1978 master's degree, you truly have nothing left to fear. I never thought I would say this, but Paul O'Connor was right. I am not suboptimal. I am determined. I still have that GoFundMe link that Paul started. It's sitting there, quietly collecting funds. People in the neighborhood keep donating small amounts, $5, $10 for the 75-year-old Mediator's Financial Freedom Fund. It's slow, but it's chipping away at the $347. Last night, I got a notification. Someone anonymously donated $347. The note attached simply read, "Paid in full. Thanks for showing me what real responsibility looks like." JM, was it Jonathan trying to make amends for the first time? Was it Jeremy thanking me for brokering the deal that got him his community center? I don't know. The text just said JM, and I am not going to ask. I immediately wired the $347 to Sally Me. For the first time in years, the loan payment was paid early, and not with the last of my savings. I am not fixed. System is still broken. I still worry about my utility bills and the engine noise in the Corolla. But I faced down a fake friend, 2 feuding identical twins, and a professional mooch, all thanks to a chaotic plan based on parallel parenting concepts. I guess the lesson is, sometimes, to fix a neighborhood controversy, you have to embrace the absurdity of the situation, draw a line with blue painter's tape, and realize that the most powerful thing you own is your lack of debt-fueled fear. Will I mediate the next massive neighborhood controversy? God, I hope not. But if I do, I'm charging $50 an hour, non-negotiable. Anyway, that's the update. I'm going to go eat some sea salt caramel talenti, a new one, thankfully, and enjoy the fact that for one brief shining month, my student loan debt is someone else's problem, temporarily.